So before we can even start on the actual thing, we're going to need to make a gauge swatch, since this is a made to measure pattern, which means that you can use any yarn size and any needle size you would like. Since I'm going to be using the long tail cast on method, I'm going to leave a long tail at the end of my yarn here, and then this side right here will be attached to my yarn ball. So to start, we're going to make a slip knot, and to do this I wrap my yarn around my finger twice like this. Gonna take the second bar of yarn over the first, second over the first, and then just slide it off your finger, and then when you tighten it, it will create this little slip knot. And then you're gonna take your needle, slip that slip knot onto the needle, tighten again by tugging on both ends of the yarn. The short end with the long tail should be on the front, the one attached to your yarn ball should be on the back. And now we're going to cast on some stitches. So this slip knot counts as your first stitch, so let's start casting on stitches from the second one. What I like to do is I like to put my index finger in between these two yarns, and then I'll hold both tails with my pinky and my ring finger. And then I'll slip my thumb underneath too as well, and you should be holding it taut like this. It should kind of create a diamond shape. And then when you flip your hand over, bring your needle horizontal over your hand like this. It should look like a heart. And then we can start casting on. So to cast on, we have 3 bars of yarn here that we're going to be working with. This first one, the second one, and then the third one. You're going to take your right needle right here and then slip it underneath the first bar of yarn, pull it up, move your hand. So now you're looking at it like from this angle. Then slip it over and under the third bar and underneath the hole that the second one makes. I'll do this really slowly once more. Okay, so we've casted on a total of 3 stitches. You can cast on as many stitches as you want. Since I'm using really bulky yarn, I'm just going to cast on around 10 to 15 stitches. If you're using thinner yarn, you might want to cast on something like 20 stitches. Alright, so I've casted on 10 stitches, and now I can start making my gauge swatch. And we're just going to be making a regular stockinette stitch gauge swatch. So in order to do that, you have these casted on stitches on your right needle. You're going to flip it over so it becomes your left needle. And then you're going to use this other side of the needle, which is your right needle. So we're going to knit our first row, and in order to knit, you're going to take your right needle, slip it underneath the stitch right here in between where the hole is, like so, from the back to the front. And then you're going to take your yarn, and make sure you're using the yarn that's attached to your yarn ball, not this yarn over here that's detail. And you're going to yarn over by wrapping your yarn around your right needle like so, and then holding this yarn taut, not too tight but not too loose. Pull your right needle down and scoop up this bar of yarn, and then you can slide this stitch off your left needle. And then we're going to make another knit stitch, and another one. And you're going to continue this until you reach the end of your row. Alright, so I have 1 stitch left. I'm just going to knit that. And now you have your first row done of your gauge swatch. We're going to flip our needle over once more. So this side becomes the left again. And now we have our new right needle. And this time we're going to purl all our stitches. So for purling, you need to make sure that this working yarn is in front of your needle. So for knitting, it's behind our needle because we knit like this, so it's behind. For purling, you want to make sure it's in front. And then for purling, instead of going from the back to the front like this, you're going to go from the front to the back. And then you're going to take your yarn and wrap it over and under. Don't wrap it under and over, that will make your stitches twisted. So over and under, hold it tight, slip your right needle down a little bit to scoop up this bar of yarn, and then slip that stitch off your needle once more. Okay, and now you're going to just purl the entire row until the end. Okay, I have one purl stitch left, so I'm going to purl that. And then again, we can flip our needle over, and you should be able to see these V stitches on our right side, and then these horizontal purl stitches on the wrong side. So these are knit stitches, and these are purl stitches. Now you're going to continue repeating, knitting one row and then purling the next row until you kind of have a good amount of length. It doesn't have to be super long into a square, you can just make a rectangle and that would be perfectly fine. Alright, so I've knitted until I have a good sizable rectangle. You don't need to cast off or anything like that. Just make sure that your stitches are kind of like together, not spread apart. And now we can take our gauge swatch. We are only going to take a gauge swatch for our stitches, not our row length. Okay, so you're going to take a tape measure or a ruler, whatever you use. And since I use the imperial system because I live in the US, I'm going to be using inches. But if you use the metric system, just use centimeters. So you're going to measure how many stitches are in either 4 inches or 10 centimeters by laying down your tape measure down and then counting how many stitches are in that measurement. So for me, that is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches are in 4 inches. So you're going to want to keep that number of stitches in mind or write it down somewhere because you're going to need it to make some calculations. So now we can finally start working on the actual hat. So sometimes some people are really confused as to how much of a long yarn tail you should leave when you're using the long tail cast on method. And so what I like to do is I like to wrap my yarn around my needle 10 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so this amount is going to be about how much you need for 10 stitches to cast on. So since I'm casting on 40, I'm going to quadruple this. And so as you can see, I already have a slip knot right here, but you would basically make your slip knot right here because this is around 40 stitches casted on. And then you'll slip your slip knot onto your needle and start casting on as many as you need. And in the pattern, the amount that you need to cast on is called X based on your calculations. Alright, and now after casting on X, we're going to cast on one more so that we can join this into the round seamlessly. Okay, and now you're going to turn your needle around again, as we always do at the end of each round or row. And so if you're using a long cord like me, I will teach you how to use the magic loop method. However, if you're using a short cord like this one right here, you won't need to use this magic loop method, and you can basically just knit in the round without having to do this extra thing. So you can always skip these instructions if you need to. But yeah, you should have something that looks like this. You'll want to fold your entire round in half, and then roughly where the center is, it doesn't have to be perfect, you're going to pull up this loop. Make sure that your stitches do not slide off your needle. So you're going to pull up that back loop until the stitches are onto this other needle right here. So you're going to shift them onto here. Okay, again, if you're using a short cord, you won't have to do this. So you should have something that looks like that. And now we can join into the round. So you're going to take this first stitch off your right needle and then shift it onto your left needle temporarily, like that. And then you're going to take this second stitch on your left needle and bring it over the first. And you can tug on your yarn tail to tighten that. And then you're going to shift this first stitch on the left needle back onto the right needle. And then you should use a beginning of round stitch marker. I'm going to use a scrap piece of yarn to mark the beginning of your round. And now you can start working your rounds. And now we're going to start with our ribbing rounds, which is going to be 2x2 ribbing. And 2x2 ribbing is kind of what it sounds like. So you're going to be knitting 2 stitches, then purling the next 2, knitting 2, purl 2, and you do that all the way around your entire round right here. So we're going to start by knitting 2, and you should know how to knit now. So we're going to knit our first 2 stitches. And now, again, purl stitches, the working yarn needs to be on the front. Then we can purl our next 2 stitches. To repeat that pattern, we're going to knit 2. And now purl 2. And you're going to repeat that for the short cord all the way until you reach the beginning of round marker. For the long cord, you're going to need to use the magic loop method. So you're going to repeat that all the way until you reach this cord end right here. And I'll show you how to proceed in order to knit the rest of this round. Okay, so I'm on to my last stitch, and since my last stitch is a purl stitch, I'm going to purl that. If your last stitch is a knit stitch, you should knit that. And now we are faced with this cord right here. So now you're going to look at this side right here, because it's a loop. We're going to need to make a loop on the back somewhere in the middle. Pull that loop backwards until these stitches meet your needle. That's what you're always going to do. And then you're going to push the stitches onto this needle like that. And then we're going to take our right needle and pull it up to create a loop on the front here, and then there should be a loop on the back here. That's the magic loop method. So now we're going to continue working these stitches all the way until the beginning of round marker. In case you're curious on how to work this first stitch, you're going to just normally knit or purl as per usual. It shouldn't be different at all. Okay, so I've reached the end of my round, and your work should look something like this. So you're going to slip your beginning of round marker over to your right needle, and you're going to repeat these same instructions over and over again until you like the length of your ribbing. So just a rule of thumb, when you do the 2x2 ribbing, you should be knitting over your knit stitches. Your knit stitches are these V looking stitches. So these are my 2 knit stitches, and you should be purling over your purl stitches, which are these horizontal bars. If you ever find yourself knitting on top of a purl stitch or purling on top of a knit stitch, that means you're making a mistake. So I'm just going to show you once more the magic loop. I'm going to knit my first 2 stitches. I have my loose needle up here, so you're going to need to slide it down so that you can push these stitches onto the needle. You're going to take the loop on the back. If your loop disappeared, you can just make a new one by pulling it out. Okay. Sliding it on. And again, you're going to take your right needle and pull it out so that there is a loop on the front here and a loop in the back here. And you can continue working until you're satisfied with the amount of ribbing rounds that you have made. I did also want to show you real quick, just in case you want to make a striped cat ear beanie, how to change colors. So you're always going to change color when you finish one round, and once you've slipped your beginning of round marker onto your right needle. Normally you would just knit and then yarn over with your first color like this. However, since we are switching colors, you're going to yarn over with your second color. I like to hold the tail of my second color. Make sure you leave like a relatively long tail so that it doesn't get undone right next to your first color like this. And then you're going to yarn over with your second color. And it's really just as easy as that. and you would basically continue on with your second color for however many rows you want. I switched every 2 rounds, and then you would switch over to your first color after making 2 rounds of your second color, and so on. Alright, so I have finished my ribbing rounds. I did a total of 8 rounds, which measures 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters. I also switched to a short cord, by the way. And so now we can work on our stockinette rounds. And stockinette rounds are so easy in the round because literally all you do is knit all your stitches for every single round until you reached your desired length. Alright, so to start our first stockinette round, you're literally just going to knit every single stitch until you reach the end of your first round. Okay, so I've reached the end of my first stockinette round. I'm just going to knit the last stitch, then slip my beginning of round marker over, and again you're just basically gonna be repeating this stockinette round over and over again, knitting every single stitch for the rest of your rounds until your desired length is met. Okay, so I have finished the base of my hat, so yours should look something like this. If you made yours shorter, then it would be like maybe like this length. I made mine longer so I could fold up the brim. And now we're going to bind off the top part right here and basically seam it so that it gives it that like cat ear look right here when you put it on these 2 points. Okay, so we're going to do this thing called a 3 needle bind off, and so to do that you can take off your beginning of round marker since you don't need that anymore, and then you're gonna take your yarn ball and basically shove it through the hole that the top of the hat makes. Okay, and now once you do that, you can flip your hat inside out since the 3 needle bind off needs to be done on the wrong side of your hat. And then once you've done that, you can now start to bind off. So both your needles should be on the right side. I don't know if it's different for lefties. If for lefties it's easier to like knit from like this side, then of course your needles would be on the left side. You're going to need an extra needle, and if you don't have an extra needle, you can actually use something like a sharpened pencil or like a sharp colored pencil or something like that. It would work. And now what you're gonna do is you're going to kind of split your stitches in half, and then you should have something that looks like this. And then we're going to start our 3 needle bind off. You have these 2 stitches on the front here. You're going to insert your needle into the first one as if to knit, like that, and then insert your needle through the second one as if to knit. So this needle should be through the first 2 stitches on either side. And then you're going to yarn over and actually knit both of those together. And so once you've knitted that together, you can slide both stitches off both needles. And so now you have your first stitch that we will bind off. Next, let's knit these next 2 stitches together. And now you should have 2 stitches on your right needle. What we're gonna do is take this second stitch and bring it over the first and off that right needle. Okay, now we're gonna knit the next stitch on both needles. Now we have 2 stitches on our right needle, and we're going to cast off the second one off the needle. I'll show you this one more time. And basically you're going to be repeating the same thing all the way until the end over here. Okay, so I have 1 stitch left to knit, so I'm going to knit those 2 together. And then once I'm done with that, I can just cast off this last one. You can pull up that loop a little bit bigger. And then what I like to do is pull my working yarn through this and then tighten that. And then you can cut off your excess yarn. And then you have your finished base. I'm gonna show you how to weave in these ends. So for this top one, I like to follow the shape of these purl stitches. They kind of look like ramen noodles. And so basically what you do is you're gonna take your yarn and just pass it through some of these horizontal bars like that. It doesn't have to be perfect because you can't see this side. And then I'm gonna follow this ramen noodle looking thingy like that. And then once more, but from up and down this time instead of bottom up. And now since I only have a little bit left, I usually just use the back of my needle to weave it in one more time, like this. And then you can tug on your yarn. If there's like a little end right here, I kind of just like leaving it like there. And then for this bottom part, the way you can weave it in is pretty easy. I think it's easier than the other one. So you're gonna put your yarn in through a needle, and then you're going to kind of go like that. And then do you see how there are these knit stitches? I like to just weave it in like this. And if this is a little bit difficult for you, I recommend just going one by one. So you kind of just go like that. And then once you're done with that, and you flip it inside out again, and then you can fold it up if you need to, the base of your cat beanie is done. Okay, so if you want that lace up portion, you can either use a thick piece of yarn or a ribbon, or you can actually make your cord, which is basically just going to be a knitted I-cord. So what you need is either double pointed needles or a circular needle like this, and then a thinner piece of yarn. So I'm using worsted weight yarn. And then you're going to cast on some stitches. So I'm going to cast on 3. So these are my 3 stitches casted on. And then what you do before knitting across here is slide your stitches to the other side of your circular needle. If you are using double pointed needle, all you need to do is just slide it to the end of your double pointed needle. And then you can knit across. And then once you've knitted across, you're going to again slide all these stitches to the other side of your needle. And then you're going to knit across once more. And basically repeat that. So this first stitch, you'll want to knit it a little bit more tightly. And you're going to repeat this over and over again until your I-cord is as long as you would like. This is what a finished I-cord should look like. And I made mine around 6 of the length that I'm going to lace it up in, but you can make yours slightly longer. I only made mine like 6, so it's going to be a little bit short. I recommend 8 if you want it slightly longer. Okay, and then after you're done making your I-cord the length that you want, we can start binding off. So first you're gonna knit the first 2 stitches. And then you're gonna take the second stitch here and move it over the first and off the needle. So you're essentially casting it off. And then you're gonna knit the next stitch. And then again repeat that motion where you cast the second one over the first. And if you have more than 3 stitches in your I-cord, you're gonna just continue doing that until you have 1 stitch left on your needle. Then you can just take your needle out and then put the end of your yarn after cutting it through that stitch and then pull tight. And then you should have a finished I-cord. And then you can start lacing this through your hat. Okay, so I already have one right here, so you can kind of see what it looks like. And you can actually do either one or you can do two on the same side. What I'm gonna do is have one on one side like this, and then I'm also gonna put one right here. So what you're gonna need is a hook, a needle, or something else that will kind of help you lace your I-cord through your hat. And then what you're gonna do is you're going to identify some stitches from the top. So over here, I worked from the third stitch from the top, so 1, 2, 3, and I have 2 stitches in between where I laced in both sides. So I'm gonna repeat that for this side. So counting from the top, 1, 2, 3. So I'm gonna start lacing from this one, skip these 2 stitches, and then lace through that one. And it's really not like anything complicated. You can pretty much lace it however you want, but I'm just gonna show you how I personally do it in case you like the method that I have. Okay, so once you do that, you're gonna pull it through and then make sure that the length on both sides is about the same. So as you can see, it's about the same here. And then what you're gonna do next is you're gonna take one side, so I'm gonna start with the right, and I'm gonna count down 3 stitches from this side because you're lacing it like across. 1, 2, 3. Then instead of lacing it through these knit stitches, you're gonna go from the side and pull up these 2 purl stitches from the back. If you take a needle or like a hook or something and just kind of go like this, you'll be able to see these 2 horizontal loops. And then what I'm gonna do is lace my right side to the left like this. And I'm gonna repeat that for this left cord. Count down 3, pull up 2 loops from that side, lace it through. And then you should have something that looks like a cross. So I'm gonna do that once more, just like this. I'm gonna count down 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, then pull up these 2 loops. I'm gonna do the same for the other side. 1, 2, 3. And then you should have something that looks like that. And then you can basically just tie the ends into a bow. And I'll show you how I do that to get kind of like quote unquote the perfect bow, or at least a nice looking one. So what I do is I just tie mine into a knot like that. You'll have one side that's on the bottom and one side that's on the top. I fold the bottom one into a bunny ear, and then I put the top one over it perpendicular, then through this hole I pull up another bunny ear like that. And then you can tighten your bow and adjust it however you like. And then once you're satisfied, we can weave in the ends of the I-cord. So weaving the ends of the I-cord is pretty simple. What you're gonna do is take the end of it through a tapestry needle like this, and then you're gonna kind of identify the bottom. So I'm just gonna stick it straight through like this. And when you stick your needle through, make sure that it's not like going outside of the I-cord. As you can see, mine is still inside. And then once you're in enough, you don't want it to be like too shallow, then you can pull that end through, kind of tug on it to make sure it's okay. And then with this excess, you can cut it off. And then you can repeat that for the other side.